What is up, guys? Teddy Cornwell here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk, the world's most underrated podcast on earth. But today, you see him, slugger, beast, MLB player, MLB rising star. We'll say it, MLB superstar. Stop me there, Jake Fraley. How are we doing today, man? How is this Thursday? How are we doing today, man?
I'm doing really well, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm super excited.
Hey, we're super excited because we love what you've done. Obviously, we're Maryland guys too over here on the Underdog Talk. So you came from around where we are, and hey, hometown hero to a point. So look at you go. And now, obviously, we just finished up with the 2024 MLB season. You were with the Reds this year. What were your thoughts on this season? How did you kind of perform? What went well for you this year, Jake?
Yeah, we had unfortunately an underwhelming season as far as expectations that we had coming into the year. So that was unfortunate in one hand, but in the other, you can't stray away from just having experience and getting another season under the belt of so many young guys that we have on our roster. We had a year that we had 2 years ago now that was way above expectations with a handful of those young guys, the majority of them, minus a few here and there. And in that itself was such big experience for them to be able to be in a place where we are coming down to the final days of the season and still in a playoff race, right? Like, still have a chance to sneak into the wild card. And obviously, we didn't. But then to go toward this year and be on kind of like the complete other side of the coin where we have the high expectations and then don't do anything with it, really. So to be able to have that for the young guys on the roster and to go through those experiences, I think are going to pay huge dividends going into down the road for, the core group of guys that we have in Cincinnati. And, I believe that the front office with Cincinnati wants to keep, the core group of guys together. And I truly believe that because I think they believe in us. And so I think, after going through this year, it was a little tough, but, at the same time, it was good experience. And I think, like I said, it's going to pay a lot of dividends going into, as early as next year and for the years to come after that.
And since you got a team there, I mean, you got some young guns there, obviously, and you have a great shortstop and obviously a great outfielder as well in there. And something that is really cool to me about you is you've played different positions in the outfield, and I have to ask, how do you kind of mentally prepare for the different demands of obviously left, center, and right field, Jake? If there is
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of well, I mean, in baseball in general, I mean, there's with the way the world is now with technology, like you can measure anything on a baseball field, on any sports field. And when it comes to our analytics department, like, we have the ability to be able to look at every angle that you need to of what kind of encompasses that skill set as an outfielder, with what you do well and what you don't do well. And that really differs based off of positions for us outfielders. Like, for me personally, I tend to play right field a little bit better than I do left field. And that's just simply because I do a better job of going back toward that corner, like, as far as like breaking that way, a little bit better. And then I do out in left field, where if you're breaking that same direction, you're kind of more going toward the gap. And you're dealing with, the center fielder obviously having priority. There's a few of things that are different on both sides of it. So being able to break those things down to where you understand what you do well, what you don't do well, it allows us to be able to come together with our outfield coach, Colin Cowgill, and to be able to address those things. And when we address those things, they are very specific to the position you're at. So while we go through camp, while we go through, even the season with pregame work, we are working on all of these things with the ways that you're, coming out of your kind of anchored spot is what we call it. Bouncing to the left, bouncing to the right, forward, back. and being able to do that all through camp at all three positions. And then obviously once you get to season, you're kind of more geared into like that specific spot that they really like you, that you're honed into, that you do well at. But again, you still bounce around. Like you said, like every year I always bounce around between left, right, and center, but mainly priority is right field with Cincinnati. But being able to go through camp like that and have all of that, those measurements allows us to be able to address all of those things at all three positions.
And which does any position or being in that position, do any of the fans chirp louder when you're in the center field or when you're in the right field, or are they all they're still heckling either way, right?
Yeah, no, they're you can still hear them everywhere, but I think you get it a little more in the corners just because the corners are shorter porches, obviously, and you have those guys right on top of you, so you definitely hear it a little bit more in the corners.
Yeah, and obviously analytics is becoming so big. Um, it's changed your game in obviously playing those different fields like you've played. Has it changed your hitting game at all, Jake, in terms of seeing the ball better and obviously making contact with it as well?
As far as like the different outfield positions?
No, well, obviously it's changed. It's helped you with the outfield. Has it?
Yeah.
The technology and all these new stuff
Okay.
helped with your game as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can go as detailed as you want to get when it comes to analytics and hitting, or you could go as simple as every guy is different. I am kind of like one of those guys that, especially like when it like for instance, to give you a good example, like going into an at bat, or let's say a game against a starter that we think is typically you're probably going to go on average 5 innings. So I know I'm going to face this starter for 5 innings. Pre-game, we have as much information as you could want. I mean, how the dude freaking tied his shoes for the last 3 months, and he didn't do it today, so maybe he's a little bit off. It's crazy. And for me, like I'm very simple in that aspect where I don't like to cloud myself with a lot of information, because when you get in the box, when you're your best, you're in a blank space. Right. And that's why, like, if you think back to like what was going right for you when you were on a hot streak, 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, I don't know who would answer differently than this, but you're going to ask them what was going on in your head, and you're going to be like, I don't know. And it's because nothing was going on. You were in a blank space. That's where you are your best. Where it becomes a problem is when you start getting in the box and you are thinking about X, Y, Z, like all of these different things and angles. And okay, this guy throws a changeup 40% of the time in a 1-0 count. Like all of those things become very complicated. And so for me personally, I like to look at, okay, what is his arm slot? How is the spin coming out of his hand? And then what are the percentages of his pitches and obviously his velo? And like for me, that's about it. So when it comes to the analytics, obviously again, I wasn't playing 20 years ago, but I would assume 20 years ago you weren't able to see, how the spin was coming out of the guy's hand. You just knew what pitches he had and how fast he was throwing. So in the aspect of analytics, that's obviously helped me tremendously. But on the flip side, it's also helped me to be able to really hone in on what works for me and what doesn't.
Yeah. Now, is there any particular pitcher you love facing because of the challenge they do present? And who would that be, Jake?
I would, and again, every pitcher in the big leagues is a challenge. I mean, they're all elite and, the best of the best in the world. That's why they're in the big leagues. I think one of the guys that every year I really enjoy facing, I enjoy facing him because I've done well off of him, is Kyle Gibson. And so, being able to, I faced him in, when he was in Texas, when I was in Seattle, and then, I believe after that he got traded over. I don't remember who he was, but I know he's with the Phillies. Obviously, he was with the Cardinals this last year. I believe he was in Baltimore 2 years ago. So I have faced him, twice a year for the last 4 years. And I've always enjoyed it because he's got like 7 different pitches and he just throws the kitchen sink at you. And like based off of like how your takes are, how your foul balls are, how your swing and misses are, like he dictates like how he's going to approach and throw you, based off of all of those things. So there's no like cookie cutter, this guy throws the 3 pitches and he sticks to it. So it makes it a challenge. And like I said, I've done well off of him. So it's always a fun kind of battle back and forth every year that we face each other.
And you mentioned you did play on, obviously. You were in Seattle where you started your major league career. And obviously, you've grown as a player and a person as well. If you could share one piece of advice with kind of yourself going into the majors, 5 years ago, what would that piece of advice be, Jake?
Oh, man. I would say that you don't really know the mental game until you are, in the big leagues. I feel like you have so many the big league. Like I heard this so much coming up through the minor leagues. By a ton of people, and it's still said today. And maybe some people relate to it and agree with it. I think it couldn't be further from the truth. But you always hear, the big leagues is no different than the minor leagues. It's the same game. It's the same. Everything's the same. It's just about going up there and everybody gets swayed and overthinks because it's the big leagues. It's the bright lights. The minor leagues and the big leagues are drastically different. The drop off could not be further off than it is right now. Like it's a lot. And so when you are going through the struggles of the minor leagues, which everybody does, is baseball. It's how the game operates. Doesn't matter how good you are. But the struggles in the minor leagues are so different from the struggles in the big leagues. So I would just say that, really understanding what the mental game is and even diving into the mental game a little bit. Like everybody says, you hear it all the time with baseball. It's a mental game. It's a mental game. But nobody really ever takes the time to really dive in and really break down what that really means. You hear it all the time coming up through the minors. You need to have a routine. Make sure you have a routine for yourself. Obviously, that's dictated a lot to the cage, but even more so, like having a routine in your defense, having a routine in your weight room, having a routine in your PT, having a routine in your nutrition, your routine in your process within your mental game. Nobody dives into that. Nobody really breaks that down for you to fully understand like what it takes to be an elite athlete. And not just an elite athlete for a moment, but to be able to be an elite athlete over an extended period of time, because the game is constantly evolving. You hear it all the time with guys who have been around for a while. Like there's always people coming for your job. There was an 18-year-old kid that was drafted this past year that they drafted to take your job in the next 2-3 years. So it's the ability to be able to go in depth with all of those things so that you can not only be elite for this year, but you can allow yourself the opportunity to be elite over an entirety of a career that you can stick around for, God willing, 10 plus years.
And the mental game, I think Ricky Williams, Heisman winner, is just preaching the importance of the mental game on the podcast. And I think there's nothing like the mental game. I always say, if you're not mentally there, you're not going to be, fully there as well. Yeah, wow. And how do you kind of navigate that it is football is kind of a next man up. That's for 100. And baseball, to a point, like you just talked about, someone's coming for your job. You're not playing, you're going down, or you're getting benched. How do you keep that mental focus and that mental strength to take through the season, through slumps, which happen to everyone, and then obviously getting out of the slump? How do you kind of just keep that all together?
Yeah, for me, it's two things. So one, I'll get into first, which is what we were already talking about, which is the mental side. And then two, I'm a believer. So being a believer in Jesus and just understanding where my identity lies. So I'll get into that after. So from the two, those are the two things. First thing being mental. Mental game is just being able to like get through a season is really, everybody's doing the baseball stuff. Everybody's doing the weight room stuff. Everybody's doing, PT. Everybody is doing the recovery stuff. Everybody's doing nutrition. Everybody's doing the hitting, the throwing, the running. Everybody is doing those things. You don't get to the big leagues by coincidence. You are elite at what you do. I think the ability to be able to get through a season and have success throughout a whole season, right? To be that consistent player that everybody is thriving to be, right? Because that's the name of the game. You want to be consistent because you want organizations, you want ownership to be like, okay, I know who Jake Fraley is. I know the type of player that I'm going to get. It's not this roller coaster of, okay, one year he's the worst player in the league and the next year he's the best. Like, I need you to be consistent, Eddie here. And that pays because they know what they're getting out of you. And the ability to be able to do that over the course of you have a 6-month season, but really it's 8 months because you got 2 months of spring training. You got 8 months where you are, getting into this phase of Jake Fraley, the competitor, right? That's the way I like to think about it. That I have to put on that suit, like Clark Kent. I have to put on my Superman suit for 8 months every single night as we get into, that 7 o'clock game, majority of the time that we're going through for these next 8 months. And the ability to be able to do that is breaking down your process, is figuring out what that process looks like. And I hired on a guy by the name of Brian Kane about 3.5 years ago, and it has changed my life. And he is a mental performance coach. He's one of one in the world, bar none. There is nobody better than this man. And he really helped me to be able to understand this, really going to be elite at what my process looks like. Not just looks like, but really understanding it to where I can, and same thing in this is I'm able to describe to you exactly what that process is. And not only that, but also being able to help people to understand, how to do it for themselves. And that process starts really with like being able to understand what does the best version of Jake Fraley look like. The best version of Jake Fraley, there's a saying that little boys live out of preference and men live out of principle. And being able to figure out what those principles look like for yourself. So like when I think about Jake Fraley and the best version of myself, what are the principles that I need to live by? And so for me, I was able to figure out 3 principles. And for me, it's being present, being neutral, and having big attitude. And so obviously being present is very self-explanatory. I just want to be present in every situation I'm in. So like right now, you and me are having a conversation. Like I want to be locked in on you and me and our talking and being indulged in your questions and my answers. And doing that in every instant that I'm in. Like I'm not trying to be, into the future. I'm not trying to be stuck in the past. I'm trying to be in this present moment right here, right now, right? The time and place is now, right? And there's another saying that the present or the past is the history, the future is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. So just being able to be present. Now being neutral, you always hear everybody talk about you have, a positive outlook or a negative outlook, right? So think of that as like a coin, right? You have the heads and tails. And I don't need to explain to you why you shouldn't be negative. Obviously, you don't want to be negative in situations. But I would challenge you that you don't want to be positive either. And what I mean by that is that when you're being positive in a situation, so like let's say we got a 7 o'clock game tonight, and we are we'll use Kyle Gibson. We're facing the Cardinals, and Kyle Gibson's on the mound, and I have a game where I am 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, and I'm just god awful that night. Okay, well I go back to the locker room. I'm sitting at my locker, and I'm just reiterating to myself, I am the best. I'm the best. I'm the best player in this league. I was the best player tonight. Tonight doesn't define me. That's not really doing much for me, other than creating false narratives for myself. Because in the present moment, I am not the best. I sucked. I was one of if not the worst player on the field tonight. And so you don't want to give yourself this false reality. And so where the challenge comes in is think about taking that coin and picking it up and flipping it on. You know how a coin has a little edge?
Yeah.
Think about you're living on that edge. And that edge is where the neutral thinking comes into play. And neutral thinking is something I got from a book that's called It Takes What It Takes. And it was the mental performance coach for Russell Wilson. In this book, he talked about a different way of thinking, which is this neutral way of thinking. And the neutral way of thinking is simply put, going back to that example I'm giving you. So instead of giving myself this false reality of positive, feedback or thoughts, whatever terminology you want to use, all I am thinking about in that moment is, okay, accepting of what has happened, accept what is, and then moving on to what is next. So what is next? And so what is next in that moment? Okay, I got to go fuel my body because I just got done playing a 3.5-hour game and I had workouts before. I need to go fuel my body. That's what's next. And after what's next, I need to go start my PT. My shoulder's been bothering me for the last couple of weeks. Okay, I know what I got to hit with my shoulder. I'm going to do some, stem work, some dry needling, and then I'm going to go do some cold and hot tubs. And then what's next after that? I got to go do some mobility stuff with our Pilates instructor to make sure my body's ready to go for tomorrow. So if you take your mind and you're stuck in that neutral way of thinking of accepting and then what is next, you're not focusing on what happened. You're accepting it. Okay, this happened, and now you're pushing it to the backside. It's done and over with, and now I'm already getting myself fueled and ready for my next competition the next day. So when you're in that neutral way of thinking, it just allows you to be in that present moment, and it allows you to be proactive in what's happening around you, and it allows you to be in control of yourself moving forward. And you're now right, like Brian has this saying where it's E plus R equals O. So you have an event plus a response equals the outcome. So the event was a bad game. The response is my neutral way of thinking, which dictates my outcome for the next day, which is me being able to show up in my most present self, ready to go for the next day, nothing clouding my mind. And I'm being able to put myself in the best position to where I can have that blank space when I step in the box for my next at bat, regardless of the fact that the night before I had 3 strikeouts and was 0 for 4. And then my last principle was just big attitude. And big attitude is simply put, it's not me walking into a room and, standing up on a table, beating my chest saying, here I am. That's not what it is at all. It's simply put that I am so detailed and I care so much about everything that I do that when I walk in a room, you recognize my presence. I have a presence about myself because I'm going about my business in a different way than the man next to me. And how does that happen? It's getting into your process. It's understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it and how to do it so that you can be consistent with it. And so living by those 3 principles was kind of the foundation that was set in us, because that's the best version of Jake Fraley every day. I need to try to be that best version in everything that I do. And then going from there, being able to I could talk about this for hours, to be very, short with everything else. You have scheduling. I schedule out my days before I go to sleep every night because I don't want to waste any time the next day. Think about your brain as like kind of like a bank. Like I don't want to be constantly withdrawing energy trying to think about, okay, I have to do this, and then let alone me forgetting it, because every day all of us have a million things that we want to accomplish and do, right? So I'm able to schedule my day every day. I'm able to make sure we call it like a bookend routine, because my AM and my PM routine are the parts of my day that I have complete control over, right? Because those 2 parts of the days are me time. It's me and family time. The middle part of my day involves a few of other people that I have no control over, right? So the most important tasks that I want to get done. So like for me, going back to I'm a believer, which will be the second part of your question. I need to get alone with the Father every single morning. It's the first thing I do. I make my coffee when I get up. I say good morning to my wife and my kids, and then I go into my secret place with my Father. I spend time with him. I get to know who he is. I share my worries, the things that I'm upset with. I give him praise for the things that I'm grateful for, the things that I'm going through. And then I get into the Word, right? I want to get into Scripture. I want to get to know who He is more and more. I want to go on a deeper level of intimacy with my Father. And then after that, I get into journaling, and I go through gratitudes and my a start, stop, continue reflection of the day. I write down my most important task, and so within that AM routine, it's getting me everything that I need to charge myself before I get into my day. And then if I can follow that schedule that I made the night before to an 80% clip, I know I had a phenomenal day. And then going from there, when it comes to baseball and performance, you want to have meditation. So like having, a mental imagery. So before games, I'm closing my eyes and I'm envisioning Kyle Gibson's 7 pitches that he's throwing and the shapes of it. I know how he's going to attack me. So I'm going through every pitch that he has and what it's going to look like. And I'm envisioning myself in my mind, making contact and driving that pitch on that location. I have a mind movie where I'm watching, myself hitting home runs and line drives and making diving catches for 7 minutes before I go into the game. So all of these things are what makes up my process. And I think for me, that's everything. And that allows me to be in that space to where I can be elite at what I do. And then now going into, being a believer, I mean, it's everything. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm going to speak about Jesus. And you come to me with a problem, Jesus, you got something to, tell me about that's amazing. I'm going to praise Jesus. We got to praise the Father for what he gave you and what he's given you now. So being able to be in a place where, understanding again, who your Father is and understanding what Jesus did for us and being able to live in that, right? everybody's going through some type of extreme darkness. So it's about, understanding what scripture's talking about and what he's getting at in the scriptures. And it's really just giving us the ability to be able to come to a father who's going to allow us to be able to live in true peace, true joy, and true happiness, no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in, whether it's something simple or something so complex that you feel like you can't breathe in the problem that you're in. And so, those are kind of my two avenues for your question.
Yeah, talk to many athletes, Jake, and you might have the most down to earth and complete answer. And obviously, I got one on. I know you're tatted up. I'm not as tatted as you, Jake, but I got 33, and obviously I got to remember that as well. And God does have a plan, and obviously turn all your words to Him. And the mental aspect is so big, and that makes me look in a new, light Underdog Talk, and I think that's something to look into. That neutral thing. Put the coin in the middle. Don't let it go.
Yeah.
Don't let it go to the tails. Kind of adding on to that real quick. You've battled some injuries in your career, like most professional athletes have. How do you kind of stay mentally strong through that? Obviously, praising the Lord. But anything else with obviously, you have a coach. Is it still the same aspect for an injury process?
Yeah, good question. No, I've had my few of injuries, just like you said, every professional athlete has had. Fortunately, it's just a part of the game. It's a part of the job requirement. We put our bodies through a lot of stress all year, and especially baseball, man. 162, and you're not counting, 30 games of spring training, and not only that, but you're not counting all the off-season training too. Like I take about 2 weeks off, and I'm right back in the gym doing, it's light stuff, but you're still doing stuff. So it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stress that we put on our bodies, and it is. It's the same process, but also a little bit different. Like you're obviously focusing a lot on nutrition, which you always are, but specific to injury. If you break a bone as opposed to a soft tissue injury, nutrition and supplements are going to be, a tiny bit altered with what you're kind of trying to put into your body. So from that side of it, things are a little bit different. And then also, obviously recovery protocols are different. So I have a high performance coach that I have hired on to, I think about like Jake Fraley and my team. I have a kind of Jake Fraley in the middle, if you think about it, and I have a group of people around me that kind of help me be the best athlete that I can be. And his name is Thomas Newman. He's my high performance coach. And so we go through a lot of recovery protocols. And so, I know that, let's for instance, like cryotherapy. Cryo does phenomenal things for obviously inflammation because it numbs your neuroreceptors, but it also does a tremendous amount of stuff cognitively. So if I'm in an instant where I'm injured and I can't hit, right, I'm doing all of my meditation. When I say meditation, I mean like mental imagery, but I'm also doing, breathing exercise, so like a 6-2-8, box breathing that I like to start out that with just to kind of get myself under control and be present. And then I get into like mental imagery. So I'm obviously doing mental imagery because for obvious reasons, I'm not in the box doing the actual thing. So that's a huge thing. But also from the cryo side, like cryo allows me, we've experimented with myself doing cognitive exercises. There's a lot of different cognitive exercises that you can do. And we've noticed that when you do cryo, I have typically people have about a 3 to 3.5 hour range where you have the effects of cryo that last. And I have about a 20% increase in cognitive function and cognitive stamina after doing cryo. So when I'm able to do that, I'm able to not only help the injury that I'm doing, right, because it's numbing pain receptors, so it allows me to be a little bit more comfortable in a specific injury, but also it's getting me to a place where I'm able to keep my cognitive function and cognitive stamina up to a point where I'm allowing myself to be in an increase in cognitive function and cognitive stamina. I'm actually doing the cognitive exercises, right? So I'm allowing my mind to be able to be worked the same way that it does in a box or if I'm on a baseball field, and then doing the mental imagery that I'm doing as well. So you're just trying to like piece together the best that you can to where you're reflecting what it's like to be in the box as far as how your eyes and your brains are operating in those moments of, seeing a pitch and trying to hit it when I can't.
Jake, are you taking like applications for your mental coaching? Because sign me up. I mean, I'm speechless, and I think athletes, people who are listening to this, I mean, take note because the mental part is just as important. And I mean, wow, I mean, geez, and I think the mental part is so important because, like I said earlier, without that mental aspect, you're just not going to be there fully. Now, kind of winding it down and looking at the current MLB season, we right now we're in the World Series. We're going to the World
Yeah.
Series today. Who do you have? Is it LA or is it New York for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you ask anybody, it's a really it's a tough one. Just because you have so many, gosh, you have so many superstars on both rosters, it's crazy. And that's the thing. Like when you talk about like baseball and you talk about like teams that are in the World Series, like that's, I mean, for obvious reasons, that's why the superstars get paid the money that they get paid because these guys are meant to put the team on their back through the biggest parts of the season and biggest moments. But man, when you're talking about teams like New York and LA, I mean, if two of them, I mean, because you got multiple superstars on each team, if two superstars end up going through a tough stretch through this whole World Series, like, I mean, you still have one or two other superstars that could put the team on their back. So I feel like it's a toss of the coin. I'm going to say that I think everybody is thinking LA just because, you got Shohei, you got Mookie, you got Freddie. So I'm going to lean to New York. I'm going to go off of the LA, kind of kicker that I feel like a lot of people are, and I'm going to go the Yankees. And I think that Garrett Cole, I think he's going to be a huge, huge guy for them. He's been huge all postseason. But I mean, you have a guy like Weaver that's closing for them. I know Weaver very well. He's with Cincinnati. He's a phenomenal dude. That guy works very, very hard to have gotten to where he's at today after the year that he had last year. The guy went from he had the highest ERA in qualifying for in baseball to the Yankee closer and one of the best relievers in baseball this year. So I think between having a guy like Cole and then the way that Weaver's pitching in the bullpen and closing out games, and then just the multitude of superstars, I'm going to go with New York.
Wow, I love it. I am too, and Aaron Judge, that guy gets cooking. That guy gets cooking. Now, my final question for you, Jake: if you could borrow one skill from any other player in the MLB, this could be current, past, what would that skill be, and what player would that be?
Oh man. I think I'd have to go. I mean, every hitter wants to be that, ultimate power hitter. So I mean, I got to take this. And when you're talking about power, it's not just strength, right? Like there's a lot that goes into you being able to be a power hitter in baseball. So I got to go with the swing mechanics and the power of Barry Bonds. Because when you look at Bonds, dude, that guy, I don't care what anybody says, that guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. His ability to consistently barrel up balls, and I'm talking like 98 up and in, and being able to turn on it and keep it straight as an arrow, into the stands is incredible. And to be able to do it as long as he did, I mean, it's really amazing. So I would have to say the ability and the swing mechanics, meaning the ability, and then the strength that Bonds had.
No, that's a good answer. I think we'd have to go Shohei because of that. I guess he has two skills, pitching and hitting. So I don't know which one I'd be more taken at if I'm going to do one. He's damn good at both. But hey, Jake, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and chatting with us, talking about the mental aspect. I know you're going to kill it this upcoming season. Now, the floor is yours. Are you working on anything? What's that social media? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you say that one more time? Because you broke up a little bit.
Gotcha. The floor is yours. Where can we find, your Instagram? Are you working on anything? Any charities? What's that all looking like?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not really much into social media. If you see anything being posted, it's my wife. But I mean, we're always working with. We did a handful of things with Dragonfly Foundation in Cincinnati with my daughter. So my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia in October of last year. We're coming up almost just a couple days away from a year since she was diagnosed. She's doing phenomenal. Thank Jesus. Incredible. She's actually sitting here right next to me coloring right now, and she's doing amazing. But we've done a lot of work with that foundation out of Cincinnati, and they're incredible. They do a lot of stuff, a wide range of stuff, not just anything specific toward pediatric cancer. And they've gotten pretty big out in Cincinnati, and they have, they're really, really good people. They're willing to work, in any form or fashion that you want to with them. So, I mean, if anybody's listening and they want to go out and donate or do anything toward Dragonfly out in Cincinnati, I mean, it would be incredible because they are phenomenal people doing a lot of really good things in the pediatric world.
And first 10 people to follow Jake on Instagram, send me a screenshot and we'll make a personal donation for every person who follows Jake to Dragonfly. Because I mean, that is, God is good, and at the end of the day, you got to pay to where where it's helping others. And Jake, thank you again for your time, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this podcast. Until next time, the tatted man himself and the